Hello there, guys, and welcome to Mimir's Council. Tonight, I'm joined by Racial Consciousness. Now, before I introduce him, just give a bit of a little brief of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be covering some of the madness that has been 2020, where it leads, and of course, today is 4th of July, Independence Day for the Americans, but something we're going to discuss, and that's what's going to segue us into this chat. There's no major structure to this at all. Just with everything that's going on, we thought we'd have a chat, and we thought we might as well have a chat in front of you guys. So I'll try and keep tabs on questions or anything that anybody wants to jump in with, but I apologise if I don't get to them all because it can be very difficult trying to run a stream and pay attention to the questions. So, hey, Racial Consciousness, how are you doing tonight?
I was good like 2 minutes ago, and suddenly I'm being hit with that initial surge of adrenaline. I'm so bad at doing these things, man. But yeah, we can pretend like we haven't just been talking on the phone for like the last hour and a half. I'm doing good, about as good as anybody else during all this global insanity that's going on right now. How have you been, man?
I'm good, and yeah, we and RC have been talking beforehand. Just actually, we haven't been talking about the show. Trying to keep our minds off it, but it's good to chat a little bit beforehand. But yeah, I'm doing good, thanks, and looking forward to tonight. But like I say, we're going to kick off with, and obviously, most of the people here don't really need to. I'm getting odd. You're a bit low. That's not you. That's me. I'll sort that out. If you just speak now, RC, and just see if the people can hear you good.
Well, I was gonna say that's why I was gonna use my other mic, but if
No,
it's just audio on your end, we'll check it out. Cause yeah, well, it's showing me good levels on my end, so I don't know.
no. It should be good now. Desktop audio is nearly right up there, so I can't see it being a problem. Yep, getting much better now. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
People are happy.
Yeah. So wasn't on my end then,
No. It's always me.
because I can't actually adjust this one that I'm using.
No. Well, anyway, we're going to kick it off, and I thought we'd actually kick it off with a friend of yours tweet, because obviously it is the 4th of July, so. Might as well kick it off. I mean, I'm sorry it's really small because I'm using Twitter here, so it's not that easy to see. But people should be able to see roughly, but I'll read it for them. RC's friend Rich, and go follow him on Twitter if you haven't already. I know he's a good friend of RC's, and he does some very interesting posts. And he's got some interesting things for the future, I've been told. But if RC wants to expand on that, he can do. But I think Rich kind of summed up the 4th of July. Now, obviously, I'm an Englishman, so it's not something we celebrate, of course. But it's something that's obviously, there's a lot of our audiences are American, and obviously a lot of the people that are coming over with RC are definitely going to be American, so we can't not talk about it. But I think Rich did a great post here where he said, on Independence Day, I am reminded that the hostilities and tyranny we face under today's illegitimate government are far more dangerous and severe than anything George III had attempted. A revolution was fought over far less than being replaced and terrorized by alien outsiders. Now, sorry to throw it back to you here, RC, but as an American, I was just wondering your thoughts on what 4th of July means in the year 2020, given the absolute madness that has already gone on so far.
Well, what it means in 2020, I couldn't tell you. I mean, right now it seems uh, like a sick joke, I would say. I mean, given the last couple of months of what we've been seeing with our major cities basically being sacked, from within. I mean,
Yeah.
being burned and looted and people being murdered. Yeah, I'm not even sure what to think about it. I mean, 4th of July to most Americans, I mean, it's never been like the holiday you would think it is. For us, it was just more of like fireworks day, if you will. It's
Yeah.
always just been more like we're gonna go to the carnival today. We're gonna eat cotton candy and popcorn, and we're gonna ride some rides, and then later on we're gonna watch some fireworks. Like that's really all it's ever been. I can't say that in my lifetime at least in my area. I mean, it's America's a big country. I'm sure it's different per region, but my region, it was never like a very patriotic thing. It was basically like celebrating the summer. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of traditions and things go down like that. But I mean, I find it funny with the, as you say, the chaos that's been going on with the Black Lives Matter after people were locked up with COVID, and then we all of a sudden come out. Well, we don't. We're still locked up, right? And then Black Lives Matter decide they don't care, and they start marching everywhere. You know, so
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't necessarily know that this year's Fourth of July really has anything to do with freedom. It's just more of like a Hallmark holiday at this point, just paper thin.
yeah, especially this year, like we said. But
Yeah.
it brings us into the segue of, like you say, what does it really mean, and are Americans free, or have they ever been? That's something that we could discuss, but we've had so much going on, and it's hard to know what to topic on tonight with lots of things because it's so much. So, and I know RC, like myself, has been around in this scene for. I've been around 15 years plus, and I think the same's for you, RC.
Yeah, I've been around for about 18 years active
Hmm.
in the pro-white community.
And one thing that made us want to do this stream was when we were chatting to each other. Sometimes we have a chat because RC, I do class him as a friend, and sometimes we get chatting and we were just discussing not just not just the madness of it, but how fast it's actually been moving recently. It's something that I said to RC, I've never seen it move so fast. I've never seen it, them push so hard in so many directions um, as I have this year. And when I mentioned this to RC, he had similar thoughts. So your take on how fast it's being pushed at the moment, RC? I mean, have you ever seen anything like it?
Nothing like this, nothing even close. I mean, we all thought in 2007, um, we thought we knew for sure Barack Obama was going to win the presidency, and we actually
Hmm.
thought that was going to be the big political turning point that was going to, bring race to the forefront, and we could
Yeah,
start mainstreaming our, our ideologies and things like that. And even that didn't. I mean, nothing has. And we just, man, I can remember, for well over a decade, we were just thinking nothing is ever going to change. We thought they were just going to take incrementalism so slow that, the whole frog in the pot metaphor,
yeah,
where they, he doesn't know he's being boiled because they're increasing the heat too slowly. We thought they were never going to change it. And this, I mean, it seems like overnight. I mean, it's like my personal philosophy, and even plans for what to do they've been completely turned upside down based on, compared to what they were even 5 years ago. Yeah, this one's really hard to keep up with right now.
yeah,
I'm almost
yeah. Carry on, sorry.
in many ways, I'm almost in disbelief at how quickly things are changing.
I'm in very much the same boat. I mean, I agree with you. I thought it was going to go slowly, slowly, catchy monkey. Um, you know, because it was working so well, really, for them. If you know what I mean, they're just doing this very
Right.
slow, brought out. It was hard for us to get our message out because people were always entertained. You know, they had enough entertainment, bread and circuses, right? That the population was just, yeah, whatever. We're keep it we keep going like that. And then this year, I mean, I was shocked with the COVID thing, just how they managed to get everybody locked up. I thought, that, and now they're prepping us for a second wave after we've had all these protests, right? So, I mean, here in England, we've still got limitations on what we can do. Um, Yet, Black Lives Matter have been allowed to protest freely, pretty much, without any, not a peep out of the media about how they're endangering lives or anything like that. In fact, the media, and there's something we're going to talk about because this, everything that this leads up to, there's some main points that I think we want to touch up on and bring our experience because, like I say, both of us have been around a while, and some people that haven't been around as long might not quite understand the gravity of what's going on at the moment. We have got mass gaslighting. That's one of the big things. the gaslighting is at a level I've never known before. Where and what I mean by that for people that don't know is where they're we've got a video that'll be coming out tomorrow, and I'm going to play it about halfway through this piece while we go grab a cup of tea, and this highlights the gaslighting, but it's where they're basically constantly saying how white people are violent, how white people are the biggest danger, how racism is everywhere, how white people did this and did that, and how black people. Whilst on the same token, they're doing the Black Lives Matter groups are doing everything they're saying we're doing, except they're getting praised. I mean, the Black Lives Matter is a corporate. It's a corporate revolution, right? RC. I mean, have you ever known a revolution in the history of man that has been backed by so much of the status quo, which in the modern age is every single big media, every single brand, right? Like there's literally nobody that is not backing Black Lives Matter, right?
That's the biggest joke of their entire, because Black Lives Matter is supposed to be one of these fight the power type of movements, and it's, fight the system, fight the power.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys are the system. You don't even realize it. Like when you have Bank of America donating $1 billion with a B, $1 billion to your guys' movement, like you're not radicals. You're not revolutionaries. Like you guys are pawns and puppets. You guys are political whores is what you are. I mean, it's, and I don't know. I've thought long and hard as to how to even address this stuff, and even if it's worthwhile, because it just seems like people are just going to take their own side, even when it's blatantly stupid. I mean, like I said, in that case, you have McDonald's coming out saying, like, when you have McDonald's backing you, you're not a revolutionary. But yet these people, they still can't, they just think they're making these corporations bend to their will, and it's like, you're not. You're really not. It's the other way around. Like you're doing their will.
Yeah, and
so I don't know what to make of it all.
Oh yeah, and that just, I mean, one point we can take from this is, even though, I mean, I have to say, I mean, this is controlled. They are. I agree with these people that say it's being fomented, right? They're pitting us against each other, 100%. But even so, right, it brings us back to the idea of ethnic nationalism and why it's so important. If you've got in any nation or any group a natural division, right, which race is a natural division, race and ethnicity will always be natural divisions in any nation. There will always be that division, and why times are good, people can overlook those natural divisions to a degree, right? They will go, yeah, I'm not too happy, but my life's good. But what you'll see is, and this is true of any division in any group, however small, whether it be a nation or just a small group, as soon as the shit hits the fan, as it were, you'll watch that just naturally divide into its separate sides, right? And that's what we're seeing. So it doesn't matter if they're pushing the buttons to try and rile us, which they are. Like I said,
they're exacerbating a pre-existing condition. That's all they're doing. They didn't create. That's what I hate about the conservatives right now. They're saying that the left is creating racial divide. No, racial divide always existed. Yeah. It can't not exist. It's divided by nature, by natural law. They're just making it worse, which at this point I guess is fine, because it really does needs to come to a head. It's just hopefully in our favor versus the system's favor.
Well, I did a bit of a rant stream on Mimir's Brunner a while ago. I'll have to try and put a link somewhere, but most of you that probably follow this probably know about Mimmir's Brunner, that follow Mimmir's Council. And I brought up a lot of these points. How ethnicity is always going to be a baseline. You're not going to get past it. And what times are good, everyone's going to think it's fine, like I said earlier. And they're not going to think it's fine, but they're willing to overlook it. This is what we find. People are willing to tolerate more if they've got what they want. Yeah? But like I say, the natural divisions are always there, and as soon as you bring any kind of pressure onto it, so imagine it as a chain, right? While there's no pressure, the chain's going to hold, but as soon as you put pressure, it's going to divide along its weak points, and its weak points are always going to be race in multiracial societies. The multiracial experiment has completely failed. I mean, and to exacerbate onto the gaslighting here, we've got A few people, I've mentioned it a few times, the anarcho-tyranny. But something I've clarified a few times on different streams, but not here at Mimir's Council, is that it's not even just normal anarcho-tyranny anymore. Anarcho-tyranny is generally where you let big crimes off, so murderers and rapists and that get small sentences and are not attacked. But then somebody makes a tweet, right, that's got some naughty words. We saw it in America recently. A guy was getting persecuted for stickers, right? The police department put out his picture, were hunting him down, yeah, because he put stickers up. We see this really hard line on small crimes, but the difference with this anarcho-tyranny, it is divided along racial lines. If a white person puts up stickers, he's going to have his face on their Twitter, on the police department's Twitter profile, demanding it and telling you they're hunting him down. When a rapist that's not a non-white rapist will get minimal coverage, yeah, and they won't be hunting him down. In this country, people get their car stolen. If you get your car stolen in the UK and phone the police, they generally say, you've got no chance of getting your car back. And if you do get your car back, it's probably going to be writ off at that point. But somebody makes a nasty tweet, you've got all the police departments going, we will not tolerate hate or whatever it is that they want to bring into the conversation. Would you agree with that kind of assessment, RC, that the anarcho-tyranny we're seeing is definitely divided down racial lines and part of the gaslighting and the bigger demonization attempt that we're seeing?
100%. Yeah, the only line is racial. I mean, you're seeing it even with the initial days of the burning and the looting. The only people that I've seen the media expose as being the arsonists and being the looters, they're only pulling white people out.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only ones that the media is willing to reveal are white. Now, we've seen the videos of obviously blacks doing it too. In fact, doing it 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1, especially when it comes to like looting of the shoe stores. All the private videos you see, it's always going to be blacks doing the looting. But when the media shows it, they'll find the one white person in the crowd and they'll say, see, white people are doing it. So even when it's people who are backing BLM, who are getting involved in the same type of destructive vandalism that the blacks are doing, the only people that the media are going after are the white people. So it's 100% down racial lines. So it's not even around politics. They're not even just letting, these leftists, these anti-whites who happen to be white, they're not letting them get away with it. They're still persecuting them because they're white. And in fact, they're trying to blame the entire, all the riots and the arson and everything. They're actually trying to blame all of that on white people. I mean, that's why, we saw Trump saying he was trying to declare Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. It's like, well, they're doing that because it's perceived by the public that Antifa is a white or white majority organization. That's why he didn't put BLM on there. He would never say, well, we need to put BLM on the list of domestic terrorists as well, because BLM is perceived as primarily a black organization. So again, it's not even divided down political lines. This is anarcho-tyranny based purely on race.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I say, I mean, I saw police chiefs. I saw this one police chief, now I forget where it was. And he was talking to a crowd of Black Lives Matter. And he was like, and he was actually a Mexican, I'd assume, or Mexican heritage. Because he says, he actually contradicted himself because he said, we're here to enforce the law, and we're not. It's it's not black people, it's not illegal immigrants that are causing destruction. It's white kids with skateboards. They're doing all the damage, and I know this. This is a police chief, right?
I saw that video as well.
Yeah, and then we had Joe Rogan. Some people still like him, saying he'd watched 100 videos of looting. Yet he only counted 4 black guys. The rest were white punks. Yeah. I don't know why anybody watches him. I still see some people think he's going to be like, he's got some decent talking points, but the guy's obviously following the same agenda. I mean, and a lot of them will follow the same agenda, whether they believe it or not, because what we live in is a time when if you're a celebrity, if you've got anything to gain and you don't, it's not a matter of keeping quiet anymore. If you don't support BLM, you don't make a tweet about it, you don't talk about it, they will come after you now. Yeah, there will be whole groups that will come after these celebrities and go, hey, you're not tweeting about Black Lives Matter. Are you some kind of Nazi? I mean, pretty much if you don't tweet about Black Lives Matter in a positive sense, you're literally a Nazi right now. A Nazi, white supremacist, hater. You know, we know all the terms, right? I'll say they're thrown around everywhere.
Well, that's the silence is as good as an accusation, or it's they're using it as an admission. So if you're just silent on it, then apparently you're anti-BLM and you're racist and whatever. So that's the hardline stance they're taking on it. You're either vocally supportive, and financially supportive of BLM, or very clearly you're part of the white supremacist neo-Nazi conspiracy or whatever.
Haters.
These impossible dichotomies that they're trying to conjure up. It's very, very aggressive. And again, it's very aggressive towards white people ultimately. Oh
yeah, I mean, like we said at the start here, at the beginning of this show, we've seen so much. I mean, I've got a story here. I'll get it up for everybody. I'll actually play the video of this one. It's the white couple. It's the white couple that not the original white couple. I can put those up too, but it's the white couple that I'll play the whole video because a lot of people have been seeing half of the video where this white lady, and I forget her name now. Do you know her name, RC? The second one where she's in a car.
Yeah, Jillian and Eric Westenberg.
Okay, those guys.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I believe it's those ones, yeah. Anyway, I'll play the video so people can see it, and we'll just get to this because I think it's good to play the whole video because we've seen a lot of the half of the video, and if we play the whole one, you'll get to see a bit more of the picture here. So, 1 second, I'll just get this playing.
Wants to violate a 15-year-old.
No, I'm asking a question. She's a child.
She bumped into me when I
So
was
if she did something wrong, she needs to apologize. If she did
this
something
ignorant
wrong,
woman bumped into a 15-year-old.
Correct?
And you're on camera.
Okay.
You're feeling threatened.
Okay, well, go in.
No, Mom.
I got this.
You're blocking me from getting
No,
my
girl,
No, we
no,
weren't. No, we weren't. No, we weren't. You're ignorant.
Go ahead, call them.
No, we will, but you're not going to sit there and violate a 15-year-old.
She's ignorant.
Do it, bitch. Do it. Go ahead. Do it. I want you to do something.
She's very ignorant.
Dumbass bitch. Yeah, I said it. You say something, I'll beat your white ass too. Oh, really? Yeah, I will. Do something. Please put your motherfucking hands up.
Do something.
Please.
Who the fuck do you think you guys are?
Who do you think you are?
Your white think you are.
You calling her name?
Yeah,
she did nothing to
yeah,
you.
I didn't. I didn't.
Kayla.
No, you didn't. You're very racist and ignorant.
You're racist because you're calling
No,
her
you
name.
bumped it. She bumped into me.
You cannot just walk
Why would
around
you
calling
bump her?
white
Why
people
would you bump her?
racist. This is not that
Why
type
would
of
you
world.
bump her?
White people
Why
are
would
racist.
you bump her?
No one's
Why
racist.
would you bump her?
I
Why
care
did you
about
say
you.
sorry?
I care
Why
about
did you say
you.
sorry?
And I'm sorry if you've
Why
had
did
an
you say
incident
sorry?
that has made
If you
someone
bumped
make
into
you
her,
feel
why
like
did you
that.
say sorry?
No one is racist.
If you didn't do
I'm
anything, why
sorry
did
if
you do
you
that?
had something like that happen.
Ignorant. Ignorant.
Okay.
Very. Mom, watch.
Get the fuck away from me!
You gonna get on her face.
You better get on my fucking face.
Right now, get away.
Get the fuck away. Get away. Get the fuck away.
Are you gonna hit? You gonna shoot me?
Get the fuck away.
Oh!
Get away. Call the cops right now. Call them.
Oh!
Call the cops.
Get the fuck away.
Call the cops.
Get away.
She got the gun on me.
Call
He
them
about to hit me
now.
with the car. Call them. I'm telling. Get the
Call
license
the cops.
plate. Get the license plate.
Get.
Get the license plate now. Cause you were never about to hit me with the damn
Don't
car.
you
about
fucking
to hit
know.
me with the car?
Fucking
Oh,
know.
both of y'all put guns on me.
Yeah.
Okay? Call Richard back up to the police. Call Richard back up here now.
I got it.
Don't you fucking jump behind my
No,
car.
I ain't jumping on your car. What
Don't you fucking jump.
Mom, stop moving.
Stop,
Mom.
up. Get the fuck back. Back the fuck up. No, you can't fucking leave.
You got all this on video? Yes.
Real comfortable. Call the police. No.
Mom, stop walking.
I'll stop it there, but I'll see what do you make of that.
Sorry, I've still got the audio on. Yeah, I actually there was a law enforcement officer who did a breakdown on it, and I thought it was the best one I've ever seen. I meant to share it with you, and I spaced it out, but he called it perfectly. The black couple, the mother and daughter, were obviously being. I mean, it was obvious right there. They're being incredibly aggressive. They're not trying to de-escalate. They're trying to demand not only an apology from this woman. When the woman wouldn't give them the response that they wanted. I mean, she didn't, first off, the white woman didn't respond to them aggressively either. I mean, she was actually exercising a lot of self-control, especially her husband too. I mean, normally you would think a husband would be a bit more aggressive, a bit louder, but he didn't. He kept his voice down. He kept his posture down. He didn't even approach them in an aggressive manner. So the white couple, you could see them trying to diffuse the situation. And you could see the two blacks were trying to agitate. They were trying to make it worse, even to the point where twice, just in that clip you showed, the mother, the older of the two, said specifically to the husband, "Say something. I'll beat your white ass too." I mean, she expressed very clearly explicit violence. Same thing with the wife. When the wife got in the car, she said, "Shut the fuck up. I'll beat your ass." So they're expressing violence, and this is what's very disturbing about this story is you get open expression of violence that people have seen that video millions of times, and the white couple never once threatened anybody. Everything they did was in response to the already pre-existing threats of violence from the opposition, and yet law enforcement has arrested the white couple.
Yeah.
And has not arrested the blacks. They did not charge the blacks at all, even though Michigan, where that took place, is a stand your ground state, which means the white couple wasn't under any obligation to run or flee or get away. They could literally just stand there and do exactly what they did. And see, this is where I think things are the most important. If anybody's going to take anything away from this, it's understand the law it's corrupt and it's illegitimate and it is not going to help you. And in fact, not only will it not help you, it will destroy you. In this particular case, I mean, this is just an average husband and wife. I mean, these aren't like the other couple that are incredibly rich, the lawyer couple from St. Louis. These are just average people. And all they were doing was walking out of a fast food place. And they were threatened with physical violence, very clearly, explicit physical violence twice. And then they stood their ground. They followed letter of the law, which stand your ground allows them to do exactly what they did in the presence of a violent threat, to stand there and say, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not moving. I'm not going to run. I'm not obligated to leave. And then she drew her weapon when her aggressors refused to back away.
Yeah,
they
and,
arrested
deliberately they stopped her from leaving by getting behind a car. Yeah, because they forced the lady there to either reverse into them, which then obviously you can imagine the screams and the calls for abuse. And then when they did try to reverse, it was that thump was not the black lady getting hit. That was her attacking the car. She
physically attacked their property, which is another, in Michigan law, they are allowed to defend property with firearm. So at no point did that white couple actually break any specific statute. I mean, they can try to find one. They didn't. This right here is a case of court of public opinion, not court of law. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm saying white people need to get smart, because as we're seeing, even following letter of the law, we are going to be arrested for just defending ourselves and defending our loved ones.
Yeah, the political climate is such at the moment that they're making it. Well, like I said at the beginning, this anarcho-tyranny is divided down racial lines. So if you're a white person, you are always and immediately at the moment going to be the suspect. This is part of the gaslighting, right? They tell us blacks are always racially profiled. Well, in this case, it was clear that these white people, I mean, look at the headline there, white couple. They're making arrest after after gun pulled on black family. Now, everybody's telling us it's nothing to do with race and race. The media are constantly talking about race, but if we mention race, we're racist, white supremacists, blah blah blah. You name it. I'm not even going to go through all the list of stupid names we're called, but. And then this is the part of the gaslighting. This is part of the madness. I mean, on that stream I did, I talk about this documentary that's going to be brought out on Channel 4 in the UK. And it's where they go into this school. And the reason I did that stream was because I was outraged. It was just, there were clips in that stream. I'll try and find a video in a second, but of just the little intro to it. But there were clips in that stream that were just insane. There was a for those that don't know, there was a little boy in it called Henry, a little red-headed boy, and he said, when he was asked about what he thinks about race, he said that he was scared to talk about it because it might. He said that he believed that if he said something wrong, that it would affect his future. This is an 11-year-old boy, yeah. And just like you said with that woman that you briefly mentioned before, when there's that homosexual black guy, I believe, and he's filming her. I don't know what she's supposed to have done, but she's hysterical, trying to cover her face, cover her thing, because she knows that reality too, right? That reality is, if you make one discretion against a so-called minority, right, you are going to have your life wrecked. Yeah, I mean, and
it'll be completely destroyed.
Yeah, and she, like I said before on another stream, that some people were saying, "Oh, look at her being hysterical." I'm like, no, her whole life is flashing before her eyes. She's social suicide. It was social death. Do you get what I mean? She could have been sacked. I mean, I don't know what happened with her, but her whole world could have fell apart just over that. And even 11-year-olds in the UK are realizing the same as that lady. Do you know what I mean? They realize from 11 years old now, they know.
Right. And that's psychological terrorism. I mean, don't think that that's not the intent. They want children growing up not only knowing the truth about race and everything like that, but they want white people to know that they're not allowed to talk about it. Like, they want them to know. They want them in this state of being terrorized and traumatized by, like I said, an 11-year-old that's already afraid to talk about it. He knows. Like you said, he knows, but he can't say it. That's the condition they want. You know, it's not just that they want to bury the truth so that we're all ignorant to it. Mm-hmm. They want people genuinely terrified to talk about the truth.
Well, I mean, it was highlights. Carry on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when it comes to an accusation of racism, an accusation is as good as a conviction. So that's why the one woman that you were talking about she was in Seattle, I believe. Yeah, I mean, when that black man followed her home and then got out recording her and accusing her of being a racist, I mean, she was, her heart was palpitating. She was screaming and crying and covering her license plate with her entire body, you know, trying to prevent that guy from doxing her. That's just, she knows that just the accusation itself is as good as a conviction, especially on social media. I mean, that's all it takes. The first video clip that you would of the Westenbergs, the one we just watched, the first clip that was shared of that, the woman uploaded it with just a mere sentence. It wasn't much, but that thing got several million views within, the first 24 hours. That thing went super viral, all because of an accusation that, white woman attacks non-white woman with gun. It was basically that blunt. Just as this one says, white couple arrested after gun pulled on black family, as if that's just what happened, as if a white person just rolled up on some innocent black sitting there enjoying their afternoon and stuck a gun in their face, which is not at all what happened. But again, that accusation, man, that's a conviction in and of itself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and just to emphasize some of the points you were making there, in that documentary on Channel 4, there was a point that's really poignant in it where they've separated the groups into two groups. They've separated a room of whites and non-whites. And that's interesting how they separate them. They didn't separate everybody into their own ethnicities or cultures. It was whites and non-whites. That's how they separated them. And in the non-white group, the woman, which is a black lady that was apparently some kind of expert in, I don't know, racial, some bogus degree, I'm sure. she's standing there and she's looking at both rooms from cameras, because obviously it's being filmed for a documentary, so there's cameras in the rooms on these children. And in the non-white group, they're dancing, they're celebrating their ethnicities, they're having a ball. And in the other room, like, they ask them, what does it mean to be white? And there's a young girl, and she just says, we don't have a culture. And then it cuts to a lady, like I say, this lady that's running the operation, this black lady. And she says, look at that. And with this big gleaming smile on her face, she says, look at that. She's talking about the non-white room. And she says, look, it's like a carnival in there. And then she looks to the screen with the white people, the white children. And she said, and her face completely turns to one of almost disgust as she says, and look at them, it's like a funeral. The contrast is amazing, right? Yeah, because those children are scared. They have no pride in who they are. They can't. As Henry tells us, he's terrified. The others are being told to express themselves beautifully with all their ideas of their race and ethnicity. The others are too terrified to talk about their race in case they say something wrong, because they could have their whole lives just ruined. You know, and that's why I made that stream the other night, because I was just enraged by things like that. When I see our children targeted for such political, for, like you said, mental torture. I mean, this is mental torture. That woman's reaction was hysterical, because that's where they're driving the average person to just absolute fear. Yeah, fear of defending themselves, fear of anything. I mean, that black person there followed her home. Right now, somebody's following you home for a minor road incident. That's called road rage, right? That's where you can fear for your life. You know what I mean? Some nutcase, if you go onto the highway and you forget to turn on your turn signal and someone follows you home or whatever it is she's supposed to have done. I mean, but no, she's the one that has to freak out because she's got some weirdo following her. But she knows, like you said, that accusation, that's it. He doesn't have to.
That's actually...
Yeah, carry on, sorry.
No, what I was going to say is in these stories, most people, they're so caught up by that. They look at it as if that's the only point as well. This woman is a racist, right? Yeah. People get so caught up in that they don't even see the fact that he followed her home. I mean, that in itself is perceived as an aggressive act. Then in most states in the United States, that's an arrestable offense. To pursue somebody all the way to their home is usually perceived as an aggressive offense.
I would see it as such. You know, if somebody's following me home, why are they following you home? Why do they want to know where you live? You know, I mean, exactly. Somebody's trying to find out where you live. Now, for him, obviously, he was trying to dox her, which is okay. It's not a physical assault, but you know, if she's got a job,
it could very well lead to one.
Could lead to one. Yeah. He filmed her house, so I mean, it's just absolute madness. But like I say, it's that accusation. We saw it again with that incident in the shop, right? So a lot of the big Black Lives Matter activists posted this, and they all accused this white guy of being a racist, right? He said the N-word. And you've got this camera of people laughing as this black guy beats this shop assistant. Do you remember that one? I forgot where it was, RC. You might know better than me. But they're beating up this shop assistant on the floor. It turns out later, obviously, that he hadn't said anything. They were just violently attacking a member of the staff. But I was reading the comments under some of these big Black Lives Matter activists, we'll call them, whatever, but that's not really what they are. Agitators. And there they were saying, and underneath all these comments were like, I don't normally like violence, but it's good to see that racists get beaten. Yeah? This was just like you said earlier, an accusation. There was no evidence. There was nothing on video that he said anything. It's pure. He said the N-word. This black guy beat him up.
Right. And I said that when that video came out, in fact, I believe that was the video. And I said that from now on, this is how this is going to be. Anytime you see one of these videos floating around online of black people beating white people, because there are hundreds. I mean, you can't go a day. If you spend even 10, 15 minutes on Twitter, you can't go a day without seeing one because there's so many, they're so numerous. I said the main narrative now is every single one is going to be excused because they're going to say, well, why are the blacks stomping on that poor unconscious man who's bleeding to death internally? Oh, well, he called him the N-word.
Yeah.
And they don't have to prove it either, because as soon as they say it, like you said, that's enough for people to go, oh, normally I'm against violence, but God, I'm loving watching them murder this guy
And it's
because he
funny.
said the N-word.
Yeah, it's funny, right, as well. I mean, when has and I try to put this back to some people that argue with me. So I'm saying, if you call me a racial slur, am I allowed to beat you half to death? I mean, is that where we're getting in society now? Are these new societal rules? You call me a nasty name? Well, when I was a kid, I was taught a little saying by my nana. She said, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And you were told that, so if somebody calls you names, you don't attack them. Because a civilized society, you deal with it in different ways. But now we're told all these liberals and people that are all for the law and all want to talk all about it, but as soon as you say the N-word or accused of saying something like that, suddenly they can. I mean, some of these attacks as well we're talking about here. And actually, when I'm going to share a video in a minute that's going to go up tomorrow on the channel while we just go grab a cup of tea, but I'll share that in a second. Some of the attacks are absolute brutal, like that one on that young Irish lad, where when he's down after being beaten up, you see a man pull out a knife and essentially just jab him a few times, yeah? We're talking...
In the kidneys.
Yeah, absolutely brutal attacks. But what did he do? I don't know. Maybe he called them a name, eh? So suddenly it's okay, yeah? And I find that insane.
That's what I actually said the other day. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but I said once you've earned that title of racist, you're no longer human. You've been dehumanized, you've been depersoned, and suddenly these peaceful leftists, that preach this whole peace, love, and unity thing, suddenly they not only approve of you being murdered in the most painful and humiliating fashions. Like I said, that kid was already unconscious. And in fact, it was being stabbed in the kidneys that brought him back to consciousness. That's what it took. That's what actually woke him up. If you watch that video, he was out cold until he got stabbed. But yeah, once like I said, once you've earned that title, now these people not only approve of that, but they celebrate it.
They do.
They genuinely take joy in something that should be like incredibly terrifying. Like they would be terrified if that was them. But the fact that it's happening to somebody else, all because, again, we'll just say he's a racist. We'll just say he called us the N-word.
The chat saying that actually that Irish lad was asked for money, so they were begging, and he refused. We've seen similar. There's a video I saw recently. A guy was asked for a cigarette. He said no. Four black guys beat him to a pulp. Yeah, because he didn't give them a cigarette. So as soon as you don't give them something now, that's probably why didn't you give it them? You actually did a good tweet earlier, RC, where you saw something similar. Where a guy, do you want to talk us through that one? Because I know you watched your bit and you got a lot to say, where the guy's being carjacked essentially, and how they used to excuse their carjacking criminal behaviour behind racial lines. They try to.
Yep, that's actually very common. It's a tool. It's not broadcast publicly. We know this because I've been to Chicago numerous times. It's a place I'm very familiar with, which is where that video took place. What blacks will do to whites, and it's always to whites because they look for outsiders. In America, when you get into the tiniest little fender bender, the culture is you pull over, you swap insurance info. Even if it's the tiniest little thing, you either, mutually agree to swap insurance info, or you mutually agree to say, hey, nothing happened here. We don't need to pursue anything. My car's not damaged. So a car full of blacks did that. They gave this white guy, who was a lone white guy, gave him a little love tap on his bumper. He pulls over, and when he did, he got mobbed by blacks. They start beating on him, and the intent was to then steal his car. But the problem was he fought back. So when he fought back, instead of saying he's a racist, they implied he was. You can hear this woman start screaming, the woman recording. She goes, he voted for Trump, which is basically the same thing. So they're saying they're beating him because he voted for Trump. They have no idea who he voted for. But they beat him up, and they beat him pretty bad, and they stole his car. But again, they make that accusation as their excuse for why he's getting beaten. And the thing is, I remember watching that video 4 years ago when it first came out, and people were doing the exact same thing. They were like, oh, well, he's a Trump voter? Fuck him. It's like, well, who cares how he voted? That doesn't mean he deserves to get beaten and have his car stolen.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that started. It was probably a tee up to this, actually. A tee up to what we're seeing in 2020 with the madness. Was actually, for me, when I looked at you. I mean, I've got no love for Trump, right? But Trump was voted in. He was the president of America. He is the president of America. And I've never seen in all my life such a president, anybody that supported him, they were being attacked, right? Remember people wearing Trump hats? It was happening all over, right? If someone was wearing a Trump hat, they just get punched, sucker punched, or attacked in the street. And so that was probably sort of part of the tee up to what was going on, right? So if you, I mean, people were getting, I saw stories of people getting kicked out of schools because they're wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And so probably that was actually probably an indication of what was to come. We were seeing this. Suddenly, if you support the president of America, you're racist and you can get kicked out of schools, you can get attacked violently. And we saw the same kind of things, like you say, because as soon as you say you support Trump, the accusation is made that you're racist, right? I mean, that's not, you're racist, homophobe, you name it, the lot, right? And we saw the same excuses, right? We saw the same from the Liberals. I don't normally like violence type thing, but, he's a Trump supporter, so, he deserved it, right? But what was strange to me as an outsider was you talking about the actual president of the United States, so you're saying if you support the president of the United States, you're racist. Like do you know what I mean? You're all these names, and it's actually the guy that got voted in. I mean, it was probably crazy from your end too, RC, but from an outside, it just seemed bizarre.
It was insanity. But I also too, I felt very similar to you as I saw that as kind of like they were seeing what they could get away with.
Yeah.
And when it came down, because again, just to preface this, I'm not a Trump supporter. I've never been a Trump supporter. But I did think it was absurd that people were getting beaten by crowds in 2016. Yeah. I remember this, 15 and 16. They were getting just mobbed by crowds. Even some had died. Again, there were murders because they wore a Make America Great Again hat. And the fact that didn't, wasn't treated as a bigger deal. I mean, it was swept under the rug. I mean, again, that's telling you exactly. That should be foreshadowing what's to come. And I said in October, I made a post telling everybody, like, guys, we've got another election year coming up. If the last one was any indication, this one's going to be chaos. So if there's anything you guys need, it's insane. But I said, like, if there's, I said this back in October. I was like, if there's anything you guys need to get yet, to prepare yourself to hunker down, get it. Don't delay until the summer or the fall when God only knows that whether or not you'll even be able to get it. Because I had a bad feeling, and it was all because of the election, in 2016.
Oh yeah, that was definitely the prelude. I tell you what, we'll take a little break now. But while we take a break, I'll put up a video that's going to be coming out on Mimir's council tomorrow. So it's only about 6 minutes long. So I'm just going to run to the bathroom and get a drink. But so you guys can watch that while we just take a little break, and then we'll pick up and we'll try and bring some of our wisdom to bear in a second if we've got any, and talk about some of the things. I know somebody's there talking about white suicide, and I have got a link up about that, so we will touch on that a little bit because it is becoming a pandemic level itself. If you want to talk about pandemics. But right now we'll just play this new video that'll be out tomorrow, so look out for subscribe to Mimir's Council and you'll see it there. So we'll just take a quick break, okay, RC? Yeah,
that sounds good.
Yeah, you just gotta mute yourself, by the way, else you'll come through on the audio. All right. Catch you in a bit, guys.
Over the past few weeks, we've grieved together as the Black community has endured more senseless acts of racial terror and violence. At YouTube, we believe Black Lives Matter, and we all need to do more to dismantle systemic racism. We're committed to doing better as a platform to center and amplify Black voices and perspectives.
Obviously, the African American community has suffered from racism for a very, very long period of time. And I cannot imagine that has not contributed to the conditions that they find themselves in.
I'm embarrassed that it's taken me 25 years to realize this. It is not enough to be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. If you're white, if you look like me, use your privilege. And for those who do not think white privilege exists, you are delusional and you are part of the problem.
Because if the answer to the question, do racism and white supremacy exist, is yes, then the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist, but who is and isn't doing something about it.
It's perfectly normal to feel a little bit guilty talking about privilege, but if it helps, having privilege isn't your fault. It's something you inherited, not something you did wrong. What privilege does mean, specifically white privilege, is that your skin color didn't make your life more challenging. And having that privilege means that you don't have to deal with things like being racially profiled or getting unfairly turned down for a mortgage loan because of your skin color, or being a minority at your workplace, so you have to explain privilege to people you work with.
Over the years, Black Americans have faced the most frequent incidents of hate crimes.
Directly tied to the rise in white supremacy. He said those two are aligned, and he wants to take both of them extremely seriously. He said that this is a time where you have to make a choice, and you heard that in his sound just there. You can't, it's not enough to just say you're not a racist, you have to be anti-racism. He said it's time for you have to be an agent of change, and if you're not being an agent of change, then you're part of the problem.
Privilege isn't just like, you know, I had the impression that privilege was one-dimensional, like you're born into the Rockefeller family. Like, I didn't think being a girl from New Jersey with a father who was a used car dealer and we didn't have a lot of money was privileged. Like, I didn't understand that, and I think that's the disconnect that a lot of white people are seeing now, that it doesn't mean that your life didn't have problems. It means that your life didn't have the problems that people of color encounter every single day.
And I think the primary challenge is we have to really look at white racism, white violence, and why is it that Black bodies have continually been disposable in our democracy?
We are overwhelmed with grief and rage by the onslaught of this coordinated violence on communities of color by white men and a system rooted in white supremacy.
There's a separate important issue, which is that we as a society have got to examine the racism that exists in all walks of life in our country in 2020, not just in policing, not just in the criminal justice system, in education, when it comes to who are more likely to be victims of crime, the fact that when it comes to media, when it comes to our boardrooms, when it comes to politics, when it comes to our cabinet, there are too few Black people in there.
You have to say, where is revolution going to occur? Where is it going to come from? It's not going to come from white people in Europe, in America. It's not. It's going to come from the oppressed. And so we should be doing all we can to support the oppressed to foment this revolution if that's what we want. That's what I'd say.
Suppose that's where some sort of global alliance of information and support could take place, that you could have, an internationalist solution if there was, where the support went, where the focus went, was to the most exploited, and that, I mean that not in a national sense, but in an international.
And the task is to bring this minority together in such a way that it makes it impossible for the legacy of whiteness to continue to reproduce itself.
You recognize that we really are, or you really were, an occupying force in just a community that's trying to get by. Just a bunch of people that are just like you or I, but their circumstances were unfortunate. They were born into this situation where this cycle is perpetuated over and over and over again, and you got a chance to see it.
All right, let's not fool ourselves. We all won the lottery here by being born in America.
Mm-hmm.
We all won the lottery by being white.
I don't care if the United States is 80% brown in 30 years, as long as they're pro-gun, pro-family, want to go to the stars, want to have freedom, and don't want to be slaves. And we need to get past what color we are and adopt the system of ideas.
This is probably going to be and I'm going to say this at this table, the most pro-black president that we've had in our lifetime.
Calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. We are now and will forever be one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God.
Whiteness is not a culture, It's not a religion, it's not a language, it's simply an oppressive social category.
And I just started to think about all the privilege I've benefited from in this industry specifically. Being a Jew is a bonus. I started to feel really gross about myself. So on a very fundamental level, I wanted to examine it further. And Netflix is great because they're just like, yeah, go, you know. I'm like, let's start with my own white privilege. I mean, I've just been badly behaved for 20 years and getting tons of money thrown at me for being a loudmouth.
Our segment is entitled, How to Find a Nazi. White people.
I have white privilege. There, I said it. I said it.
There can be no white race.
Yeah, I can handle that.
And this is what you see when you're seeing looting. You're seeing a lot of these fucking young white kids that have probably not a political thought in their fucking dopey heads. And they're just running in to get free Nikes. And that's really what's going on. Yeah. I've watched about 100 videos of people looting. I might have seen 4 black people. It's all these white kids stealing sneakers.
There can be no white race.
Well, there you have it, guys. That's a video. That video is going to go up tomorrow. And before we discuss some of the things that are involved in that, I'd just like to plug a lesser music there. We used one of his tracks. Really good track, and it suited the video. We normally use Hallender's music, but we wanted a bit more of an up tempo and a bit more of a song with bite. And sorry about that video. It is provocative. It is in your face. We don't hide it, but we wanted to show the contrast with what is being said on the media with what is being played out in reality, because they're very different things. Yeah, they're very different things. And we wanted to do that in a very blunt way. We didn't want to ease the pain of that. We wanted to hit it pretty hard there, so you could see it. We also tied in some stories there, as you could see, where they were talking about a communist, I can't even say the word, but the communist revolution is going to be started by the non-whites. And we see Noel Ignatieff there telling us how they've got to organize the minorities against the whites, because, as he says at the end there, whiteness has got to win. The white race has got to win. Racial consciousness. Your thoughts on that video, mate? I think that's the first time you saw it.
That's the first time I saw it. I suppose that's the one you linked me earlier, wanted me to check out before the show. Yeah, that was perfect. That's exactly what we need. I know in our community, we've seen a lot of them, and a lot of our people they're getting a fatigue syndrome from seeing those every day. But we have to understand, we are a tiny minority. You know, social media keeps us locked in our tiny little bubbles and doesn't really let us reach out to the greater world. So it is important, as unpleasant as it is, it's important to keep sharing those videos so the outside world can see not just what's happening, but like what you said, the contrast. Yeah. What, you know, to compare what the media says is happening versus what actually is happening. I mean, this is anybody who can't see that this is a literal war on white people. Again, they're blind.
In many of the comments there that we use as the audio, they're kind of saying that they need to organize internationally against us.
Well, that's what I wanted to a point. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
That was a point I've been thinking about on and off all day. Is that in warfare, you know, there's ultimately two different kinds. There's conventional warfare, which everybody understands. You know, that's bombs and bullets and very clear lines and uniforms and flags and stuff like that. There's conventional war, and that's not what's happening here. On the other end of that is unconventional warfare. Now, unconventional warfare is not so clearly defined. It is a much broader spectrum of a subject. And so what we're seeing here is in my mind, this is a very clear example of unconventional warfare being waged against white people. And it is, in fact, leading to physical violence and death of white people. I mean, the violence statistics, the crime statistics on, you know, interracial violence are overwhelming. The majority of interracial violence is blacks committing violence against whites. It's not even comparable in terms of whites committing violence against blacks. That's such a tiny little amount compared to how many blacks are, you know, robbing, raping, and murdering, beating and murdering white people. So what we're seeing is the rhetoric that we're seeing in universities and on TV and movies, TV shows, the media. That's all resulting in this physical violence because they are promoting it, they're encouraging it, and it is happening.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
unconventional warfare.
and that's an important point at the end there. You made a very important point. Isn't it interesting that inciting racial violence, if somebody makes a post that's even, remotely could be seen as inciting racial violence, even when it's not, by any objective standard, you'll see them jump on it. Look at these. You'll see headlines: far right, something or other, is inciting racial violence. Yet the media, right, and anybody that tells me different, given the last month, over the last month, tells me different is off their it has got to be insane and not opening their eyes. The media is constantly inciting. I mean, the clip that we used at the very beginning of there, that is the CEO of YouTube talking, where she says, that black people are suffering violence. I mean, really? Where? And I've said this before, and I offer the competition to anybody. Just want to say, if somebody wants to show me a video of a bunch of white people beating up a black person, I'll give them 10 or more per video of the opposite. Yeah? And that's objective reality. That's when I can look and show me the video, show me the evidence. Yeah? And carry on, sorry, RC.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. That I think that's the whole point of it. Is again, they're not doing anything direct. They're not saying specifically, "Hey, go attack white people," and so they have this plausible deniability, right? But what do you think's going to happen when you have every single media station in the world saying, "Oh, blacks are constantly suffering violence from white people attacking them"? What do you think's going to happen? And so they're planting the seed in black people's minds that they're constantly suffering this injustice of violence from white people, even though there is none. But that doesn't matter because they're just hearing it. They're saying, "Oh, well, this is happening to us. Well, maybe we should go out and do something about it."
Oh, yeah.
So they are, in fact, the media is 100% inciting violence against white people, which, again, like you just said, if you or I said anything similar on social media, we said, "Hey, if we incited violence towards blacks, we would be arrested by the end of the day." I mean, it's not even a question.
Yeah,
but the media gets to do it without consequence, with impunity, day in and day out for years and decades.
Oh, yeah.
This is, again, it's a war.
People will say about that video, they go, "Oh, well, it might be encouraging." But the video, I don't speak in it. Video is their words, real images, real video footage. Do you get what I mean? We've put the words together, but they're words that are said by our elites, whether it be media, presidents, talk show. Do you know what I mean? Across the board there, right? Supposedly academics, several supposed academics in there. We use audio. So their words and real videos. Yet we could be accused of something with that, right? Even though it's their words and their videos. But that's what we live in, right? And that's what... But this is something that, we've got to address. It's now it's becoming almost almost dangerous because of this inciting of just being white, like it's never has before. And this is why I keep telling people, and you made a point of share these videos. We make videos here, we make videos on Mimmir's Runner, we make videos and we just keep putting them out. Not many of them get very far, they don't go viral. The point is just to keep pumping them out, get videos out and out and out, because if you get one that reaches the masses, because that's the point, that's where we want our videos to end up, so they can get the picture. But it all helps with it all starts with sharing, and that's something that's really because we've got to get this message out. We've got to get it to our fellow people because they're in danger right now. These children at school that are being taught we're all the same and black people are there, but why the media is, especially at this time, why the media is inciting them against us, it's never been more dangerous. So telling somebody that, it's safe to be in the company of these people, safe to go to their areas or neighborhoods, in my opinion, then you are you're not inciting racial violence, you're inciting crime. You're encouraging somebody to go to a place where they're going to be victimized. But because you encourage them to be the aggressor, right?
Well, because that's a sin in and of itself. A white person walking through a black neighborhood. So if I mean that can get you not only attacked, but that can get you killed. I mean, and that's exactly what the media is encouraging. Well, not just the media, but schools, especially when they're teaching these young kids that, these non-whites are not only just the same as you, but in fact you should be friends with them and you should date them. Like we could show you, countless cases where white women have done just that, and it's cost them their life. So yeah, they're encouraging white people to go into neighborhoods where they just really shouldn't go.
Yeah, dangerous. And this
especially,
actually,
like I said.
Yeah, carry on.
No, go on.
Well, this was proved in a case. Now, I wish I had it up, and I wish I'd thought about this before, but I'll try and get something for this and do a post on it or something. But there was a case going back quite a few years now where a white woman had been arrested for some misdemeanor. I think it was like drunk or, drunken disorder or whatever. And they released her. The precinct she was, the police station was in a black neighborhood, and they released her. Before she got out of that black neighborhood, she'd been raped and thrown out of a window. Or she had at least been thrown out of a window. Like I say, I need to find the story to remember because this is going back a few years. The judge, the family of the girl said that it was that the death was caused by the police because they released her in a dangerous area. The judge agreed. Yeah. So the judge basically said that by releasing a white girl into a black neighborhood, they were responsible for her death. Now, what does that tell you about the reality? Do you get what I mean? That the judge blamed the police because they released her into a black neighborhood and didn't take her out of it to a safer area. Now, I'll try and find
that's
that.
what.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was going to say with all of this, like I said, it's becoming increasingly dangerous because they're turning violence against white people into some sort of pop culture fashion trend. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to see if their video against violence against white people is going to go viral. It's like a competition now.
Yeah.
If you can do it and get away with it and become famous for doing it. I mean, especially in that one with the Irish kid getting stabbed. I mean, you can literally hear the camera dude like laughing like it was a joke. Saying, "Oh, look at him shank this fiend," like he was, like it was just, like it was some kind of social commentary.
Oh yeah, I mean, another thing you'll see with a lot of these. I mean, we obviously took the audio out of those videos in that video there because obviously we wanted to play the media audio. But in a lot of these videos, they're having like they're hooping and wailing and partying as it's going on. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a fun activity. This is.
That's what I'm saying. It's a pop culture fashion trend.
Yeah.
Like it's something to get excited about. Hey, we get to basically murder somebody and have it condoned. Like, yeah.
Somebody's saying that happened in Chicago and she was alive but brain damage. It could be, like I say, I haven't looked at that story for a while, but yeah, there's a lot going on. And somebody else in the chat there mentioned the two Scandinavian ladies that were, young women. They went to Morocco to help, I think. So they wanted to see the world and do some aid help, and they lost their heads, quite literally. Now, I saw when that come out, something that I always get frustrated about. It serves them right for going. But what people got to remember is if you're an 18-year-old, 18, 19, 20-year-old that's just come out of university in a Western country, you have absolutely been indoctrinated to believe this. Do you know what I mean? And without any family or anybody to warn you, yeah? I mean, are we going to blame the victims? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, they're victims of a system that is out to get them. And that is why it's...
Well, especially when they're that young.
Yeah.
There comes a point where they're not victims, when they become, truly fully grown adults and they're capable of making their own decisions. But at 18 years old, I'm sorry.
I think they might have been 20, but they were fresh out of university. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
First time into the real world. I don't know the exact age, but they were fresh out of university. It's basically, I think it was going to be their gap year or something, maybe. You know what I mean? They were going to... The indoctrination. And this is why our voices are so important to get out there. Even if you feel you're not doing anything. That's why I encourage everybody to make their own montages, make their own commentary. Because it's not about competition in our groups. It's about getting... If one of you guys just makes a video, and because going viral does not, it's hard, right? It just happens or it doesn't. And any one of you could make the right video that just hits the right point at the right time. And that's what we've got to get our message as far out there as we can, even if it just makes people think, right? Just think for a second. Just makes them, even if they hate you and go, they're all racist and I don't want to listen to them. But when they go to book that holiday, they just, back of their mind, right, creeps in and says, you know what, maybe it's not that safe. Do you know what I'm saying, RC? It's not about just getting to agree. It's just showing them a reality, like the video that we just made. Just think about it twice,
everything.
Right?
Yeah, everything is about planting seeds. Yeah. I mean, that's what the system does. They plant those seeds that eventually lead to, again, going backpacking in a totally hostile environment that results in you being raped and decapitated. Because they didn't convince those girls to go backpacking in Morocco overnight.
No.
That took years.
That took the
so it's the same
schooling
thing.
system.
We have to, and we have to do the exact same. We have to plant that seed in people's minds that just makes them think, okay, even if they're going to go do this dangerous thing, well, maybe they're going to be a little extra vigilant.
Yeah.
They're going to be a little extra aware and maybe not let people get as close to them as they might have, because in the back of their mind they're going to go, no, I remember this bad thing happening, and I don't want to be the next bad thing that happens. Like, because that's ultimately, if we have one objective, I mean, it's saving white people from these types of events, from their own ignorance, essentially, at this point, from the brainwashing, because this isn't just ideological anymore. People are physically being murdered. And when they're not being murdered, they're being damaged in some kind of way for the rest of their life, whether they're being raped or whether they're being beaten and getting brain damage. Like, lives are changing, all because, again, this racial line. And all we're trying to do is save white people. That's it.
Yeah, that's
and we have to do that in whatever way we can.
Yeah, and we've got to just, And the only way, we've got to, it's our voices, and we've got, like I said, people get worried about what they say. Now, I show my face and give my name's there, I show my face on my videos, and people worry about that. I'm not telling everybody to do that, right? I made that decision on my own, and that was my decision to make, and it's everybody else's decision to make. But one of the reasons I did that and started to do that was because I've got no shame in what I think. And like I say, everybody's case is different, so I'm not judging people by my standards here. But what I'm saying is, for me, I was just like, what the hell? I can't live in shadows. What I think is perfectly okay. I don't hate anybody except those who harm me and mine, yeah? And that's an absolute natural instinct. If somebody starts hurting you or attacking you, to have some reaction to that. But anything that I do is driven by a love for my folk. It's driven by the idea that, the idea that I want my folk to exist into the future. The most primal, not even primal, the most fundamental law of nature, the will to live, and to procreate and to move forward in time. If you don't have that, no plant, no bacteria, no animal, no beast, no man would exist, right? It's the most basic of natural law. And sorry, racial consciousness, please.
No, I was interrupting you again. But isn't it a shame that here we are, even after all these years of social media and us doing everything we can to promote what we are, to define ourselves, we still have to make that distinction. We still have to tell people, hey, we're pro-white because we love our race, not because we hate anybody else. Like, it's stupid that we still have to say that, because we could say it 1,000 times. Like, even if the media were to bring us on, let's say, and interview us, like, we could tell them the very next day, they're still going to say, oh yeah, remember that guy we had on yesterday who hates all non-whites? Like, for all these decades, the opposition has gotten to define us. Like, that's the hardest part, is that, if this were just a heads up match, we would win, no problem. If we had the same level of finances and influences and power so that we could actually define ourselves, we would win, no problem.
Yeah.
But the problem is imagine that a group of people who hates you gets to define you and gets to tell the public who you are and what you believe in. They never let us do it. But yeah, no, I've never actually met anybody in our movement who got in here just because they hate some other group. Everybody I know, they're here because they're like, look, I love my people, and I want to protect my people. I don't want bad things to happen to my people. I want our race to have freedom, creative freedom, spiritual freedom, political freedom.
Yeah.
They want all these positive things. I've no element of hatred whatsoever.
Well, we've got a great comment here that we're going to have to highlight from a Mr. Christopher Henderson, and I'd like to. He says, "Who are you saving? Who are you saving white people from? Are you wanting to save white people from the 100 million indigenous people killed, from all the slaves brought over from Africa?" Well, first, how about we're talking about historic events there that happened many years ago. So, Christopher there, by the way, is saying it's okay for white people to be attacked because of some alleged injustice of the past. But he doesn't mention all the injustices against white folk. For example, the Barbary slave trade, which lasted longer than the US black slave trade. And I'm in the UK. What about me? The slaves that we didn't bring over, every one of the minorities here either directly came or is a descendant, a first or second generation descendant of somebody that came here by choice, Christopher. And they've come here now, and from our goodwill, we gave them a home and we gave them work. And we gave them a society that they could never achieve in their own nations. And they came here, and then they said, fuck you and give me more, Christopher. They attack us on our streets. London is one of the most violent cities in the world. We don't have guns here, but knives. Oh, we have a lot of those. And it's one of the most violent cities on the planet. Look at who's committing the crimes, Christopher. Is that because they came here for work and then were prejudiced against? Well, you know doors are two-way, Christopher. See? Our country was built on hating. No country was built on hating. America was not built on hating. America was built by poor Europeans, some of them that were being persecuted in Europe, who then went to America against all odds, rode out the deserts in the West, went up into the North Plains of in Canada and all these hostile environments where nobody was living barely. And they carved out an existence. Was there conflicts with the Amerindians? Of course there were. That's always been the way. People looking for somewhere to exist, people trying to feed their family and another trying to feed their family, always going to come into contact. But a lot of those injustices... carry on, RC. Sorry, I'm getting a bit ranty there, but yeah.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'd be willing to bet that Christopher believes that, non-whites have the right to be refugees, right? To flee unpleasant conditions in their own countries and to seek refuge in white countries, right? Well, that's exactly how America was founded. It was people fleeing persecution. It was people fleeing unjust treatment by a tyrannical government, a tyrannical king. That's all white people were doing when they came to the United States, is they were fleeing that. They were essentially refugees. But white people, when they're refugees, all we hear is that they're colonialists, they're colonizers. So again, either you agree with refugees having the right to flee their own countries where they're facing unbearable conditions, or you don't. Or at least have the balls to admit that you don't agree with white people having the right to flee unhealthy conditions. I mean, who are the Amerindians to say, hey, no, whites aren't allowed to be refugees here in our land? And if the Amerindians did have that right to say, no, white people don't have the right to be refugees here, go somewhere else, then why don't white people in Europe have the same right to tell every African, every Middle Eastern to say, no, you don't have the right to be a refugee here, get fucked. So you can't have it both ways.
No. And it's always so funny when they try to apply this argument. You know, the Black Lives Matter protests are going on from Oslo in Norway to every small... I bet they've had one in Morocco or something. I mean, Monaco. I don't know how... All over here. Places that never even had anything to do with slavery. Britain's only interest in slavery was in the Caribbean. Yeah? And that was by a tiny fraction of our population. And you know, me personally, paid some taxes towards ending slavery, where the British patrolled the waters and tried to end slavery. And they pretty much did it in the West. Although, if you want to talk about slavery, you can easily go to Eastern Africa, where the slaves were originally brought from, and slavery is rife. You can go to the Arab nations, slavery is rife. Israel, slavery is rife. It's rife all over the place. But you want to talk about some idea of Amerindians being wiped out or something. Do you not understand how history happened? How about the Mongols when they under Genghis Khan? They wiped out loads of people. Do we ever? Are we going to go?
Genghis Khan, for sheer numerical deaths, I mean, he still holds the record for the largest genocides on the planet. I've never once heard anybody say that the Mongols to this day need to apologize for that.
No,
or that they should feel ashamed of it. No, even I wouldn't. I mean, and Europeans were part of the people that were being felled under Genghis Khan's spears. I don't hold anything against them for that.
It's part of life, and what is the ultimate conclusion anyway to this? Right? Okay, so we did a horrendous thing 200 years ago. Yeah, 100 years ago, whatever. That nobody alive today had anything to do with. What is the end result then? So we punish me and my children? Are you saying my children, my son and my daughter, should then suffer? Are you actually wanting them to feel violence, Christopher? Is that what you're saying? That they should have violence committed upon them because of some injustice you claim happened? Yeah. I mean, where does it end? Do you get what I'm saying? What is the end of this?
Well, that's the whole point. Is how can you punish a people alive today who didn't, for the sins, let's say, of generations who have been long dead? You can't punish somebody today for something they didn't do, nor can you give reparation to a group of people that have never had anything done to them. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like I've said numerous times, not one single white person alive today has ever owned a black slave. Not one single black person alive today has ever been a white man's slave. Nobody owes anyone a goddamn thing. It's that simple. Because if that's the case, again, if we want to start blaming current generations for the actions of the past, and to, in the case of white people, say all white people today are guilty for slavery, well, then let's go ahead and say that every single black person is guilty. Every black male is guilty for having raped a white woman, because it has happened that black men have raped white women.
And every black person is guilty. Every African then is guilty of slavery because they sold them.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, how far does this need to get taken? That's the whole point. Is like, how far does it need to get taken?
Yeah, how far do we go back? Are we allowed to go and demand reparations from from Northern Africans because of Barbary slave trade?
And here's always been my point when dealing with this in real life. When I talk to people about this in real life, what is the objective here? Because race relations have failed. We know this. No one's arguing this. Everybody knows race relations have failed. So the point is, we're supposed to be seeking a solution, right?
Yeah.
Ask yourself logically, is persecuting white people a solution? Is attacking and blaming and hating white people going to convince white people to see it your way? Like, again, if the point is to find a solution, you're failing. But we know that's not the point.
No,
the point is they want revenge
Revenge.
against generations today who were not guilty of the crimes they're being persecuted for.
Yeah, and even I come from a working class background in the UK. My family, as I cover in some of the videos over on Mimir, were in poor houses, splitting rope, man. Right? They never owned a slave. They never owned nothing. They were abused and used. Yeah. When I was younger, and even when I was, and then I wasn't as aware as I was now, I always find it funny that people would say that the British Empire did this and the British Empire did that. I says, you're free of the British Empire. What's your excuse now? I'm still under it, right? So if it was that bad, I'm still under it. My ancestry doesn't. I owe no one nothing. I've got no shame. And if my ancestors had to fight another tribe and take them out to live, then I'm not ashamed of that behaviour. That's why I'm here. I'm here because my people survived. My people overcame the odds. And this good war, bad war, wars where two people need to feed their children, both sides need to feed their children. There's no right or wrong side. There's just the laws of nature taking over. Yeah. There's just the laws of the world. Yeah. Two lions fighting for the same resources. One's got to go, okay? One's got to go. That's what nature decides. That wasn't my rules. That's the world I was born into. And when poor Europeans went over to America to find their land, they came up against others. And then it was The law of nature took over to who gets to eat and who doesn't, and that's just the way it is. There's no excuse. I've got no apology for that. I don't even. In fact, I'm proud of my ancestors for what they did that I exist, and I'll never lower myself to say, oh well, you know, they did something bad, and you can't object. The whole idea that you can bring any kind of modern morality onto something. Am I supposed to say, hey man, for hundreds of years the Romans terrorized and enslaved my ancestors, so hey, can Rome, will you give us Italy? Can we get some reparations, please? Come on. It would be laughable. It'd be a joke, you know? Should I go and petition Italy for some reparations for the Roman Empire? Jesus Christ. But yeah, that's what we're up against, right? This is the kind of mental illness that we face. Right, RC? Sorry, rambling again.
No, it's just fine. I completely agreed with all of it. I'm the exact same way. I don't feel bad about anything that my ancestors did. I mean, my ancestors were hard men. That's why white people dominated this continent. That's the way it was. So not only do I not feel ashamed, I'm proud of them. Again, when animals fight in the wild over territory, everybody says that's just the law of nature, right?
Yeah.
That's survival of the fittest. Why does that law not apply to human beings? Because that's all that was happening.
Yeah.
Sure, it's tragic. No one's saying it's not tragic and unfair. But where in the hell does fairness exist anywhere in nature? Animals fight for territory. Animals fight for resources. That's just the way things go.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not going to apologize because my ancestors were hard enough to survive and to build a country that was nothing, you know, to build an actual functioning country out of a wilderness.
The funny thing is, the only reason we're having this conversation is because white people Europeans are generally very nice, right? You won't find descendants of African slave trade in the Arab countries, even though it still exists today. You know why? Because they castrated them. Yeah. There were no descendants. They didn't allow it to happen. We did. You know, the only reason that there's any Amerindians around to protest, or just like the Aboriginals in Australia, is because we tried to do a deal with them. Genghis Khan and people like that, they didn't. They just wiped them out. Okay, they wiped them out. There's none to protest. The only reason we have any protest is because of our kindness. Because we're not that evil. That's why we have the problems, and this is why you don't see the problems anywhere else. But this is a joke, and somebody's been mentioning white suicide rates recently, and I did find an article. I looked it up just to try and get some perspective on this, and I do want to touch on it because it is something that I do believe doesn't always get much healthy. Man, why are we ignoring epidemic of white male suicides? Now, this is actually not a pro-white site, I don't think. Anyway, I couldn't find anything there. Or it's just a neutral site, but it actually identifies it. In that article, it actually talks about why we really need to talk that it is specifically white males. And white males are more than double any other ethnic group, except for Amerindians. But they're still more than Amerindians, just not double Amerindians. So that's interesting, right? Let's just draw a correlation there. So the Amerindians were defeated and feel weakened. We're committing suicide at higher rates than them, percentage-wise. So what does that make us feel? Yeah, what our young people feel? And this is obviously men. I think the age range was quite big. It was 25 to 64. And actually, white women commit suicide at a higher rate than every other race too. So, you know, and it's something. And when we talked about little Henry's terrified of saying the wrong thing. Henry's terrified. Now, the psychological trauma there, when you teach a child to feel shame of who he is, like Christopher wants to teach them, to tell them that they're evil and that their whole system, that everything they've got is built on racism and hate and all these horrible words that they've put into the vocabulary. And then you wonder, and then is there any... There's not really much of a... You don't have to take much of a jump to understand why the white male suicides are at all-time high. and white suicides in general. Like I say, men generally commit suicide more than women, and our women commit suicide more than. In fact, some of them are equal to other races, males. This is because we're being dehumanized in the media as racists. That's all we are: racists, Nazis, any buzzword that they have over 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years through Hollywood, through the media, told these are evil, right? Nazis are evil. White supremacist skinhead movies, yeah, they're all evil, evil, evil. And as we pointed out in that video that we showed there, where Netflix, when they say how to identify a Nazi, they actually say one of the reasons is white people, and they say it twice in their reasons. How do you identify white people? How do you identify white people? That's how you identify a Nazi. It's a white person. Yeah. So what about these suicide rates? Well, they're connected to the absolute dehumanization of a race, which is our race. Starting, as we see, from little Henry at a very young age, telling them that they should be ashamed. Like the little girl in that video says, she has no culture. She doesn't know who she is or where she is. And like I said, that these are the people that need to hear that they have got value. To me, little Henry has got value. I want to teach him about our culture. I want to teach him about his brave ancestors. His warrior-like ancestors, his ancestors that endured through no famine, no plague, no war could wipe them out. That's what Henry's made of. And I just wish Henry would know. And then maybe if more people understood this, maybe they wouldn't be committing suicide. Sorry, Ossie, anything you want to add to the white male suicide rates?
No people who truly has supremacy and privilege also has the highest rate of suicide.
No, good point.
Any race, any group of people who happens to have true supremacy, they're living good. They're enjoying life. They're not committing suicide. The suicide rates are the measure of how white people feel in society. I mean, or any race. If you want to look at how a group of people feels in society, look at their suicide rates. If you want to see a person to determine their own sense of self-value, how they value themselves, look at their suicide rates. Those suicide rates are an indication, and they're saying that white people do not, in fact, have supremacy. They do not, in fact, have privilege. They don't even feel valuable to society, because if they felt like they were of value, they wouldn't kill themselves.
And that's a great
point.
It's
as simple as that.
Yeah.
And the only way that our universities can dismiss this is through some convoluted explanation that's so goddamn complicated that, they'll tell you, well, you just don't have a master's degree in sociology, so you don't understand it.
Yeah.
Because it really is as simple as that. White people have the highest suicide rate on the planet because they do not have privilege. They do not have supremacy. End of story.
Exactly, and like I say, we could go back to that little the documentary that was on Channel 4, and I'll have to do a proper video about it, but we should. They're like a carnival. They're like a funeral. Well, but it's the funeral room, the white people, the white children, sorry, that are acting like they're in a funeral. They're the oppressors. It's the carnival people that are loving their existence. They're the oppressed. This is the retardation of their argument, right? It falls apart even when they're trying to explain it.
Well, isn't that what's called doublethink? If we referred back to Orwellian terms. I mean, they're literally showing you, again, these people who are oppressed and oppressed by the system, and yet they happen to be the happiest people. They happen to enjoy life the most. They're celebrating their own culture the most, even though they're the oppressed. But then you look at the people who they claim are the oppressors with all the power and the privilege and the supremacy. And like she said, it's like a funeral in there.
Yeah, these are 11-year-olds. Imagine a bunch of 11-year-olds being so terrified, so unsure, and all they were doing was asking them about their culture.
It makes you wonder. Yeah, it makes you wonder how many of those 11-year-olds are going to live to see 20.
Well, yeah, with the suicide rates as they are.
Right. Exactly. And they're already terrified to this degree. It makes you wonder. Those suicides should be considered murders of the system, is what they should be. Because those kids wouldn't have committed suicide. These people would not be committing suicide if the system wasn't making them feel like they needed to, that was the only option that they had. Again, these suicides are in fact murders via this anti-white system.
Yeah, and we can, I mean, obviously, some people say not all of them. Of course, not all of them. We're double the rates of anybody else. Okay? So at least half then, right? At least half, yeah. But that's still too many, right? If you're doubling the amount of other races. And this is percentage-wise, not numbers. This is percentage, yeah? I think white males, I think in that article there, I'm not 100% sure, I think they said 70% of suicides are white men, and they're 30% of the population. It just shows you.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the other 30% are actually white women. Do you know what I mean? So it's a white problem, suicide in the West. Which, like you say, if we're the oppressors, if we're the privileged, why are we doing it? Because we're not. This is the point. There is positive discrimination, affirmative action, you name it, right? It's all there. And something we see now, and I would like to touch upon this before we round up the show, is what we're seeing now in the West is something that we saw, if people with a bit of a longer term memory and have looked at their history will notice that this has been seen before, right, RC? It was in a small little country in South Africa, yeah? Where we saw the narrative change, where they still have affirmative action for blacks, even though whites are a massive minority there. Violence against whites is commonplace in South Africa and largely excused and let to happen by local police and government. But is that the world we want to live in, right? We should be helping those South Africans. Of course, we can't. Of course, our government here in the UK will offer 3 million South Koreans free passage to Britain, but it wouldn't lift a finger for South Africans. Because obviously, we know why, don't we, RC? Why is it?
Again, it's that racial line.
Yeah, they're white.
South Africans are white.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing. I mean, I know you follow the South Africa tragedy as it is at the moment, but I know, and I don't want to always play it down, because I know that there are some very proud Boers out there.
They're very hard dudes.
Yeah, they're very hard.
When they get their opportunity, I mean, the world is going to see something that they weren't expecting. When rule of law comes to an end, you're going to see the Boers you're going to see them shock the world. I'm not kidding. Those guys, I try to talk to some of them every day, as much as I can. I mean, I talk to a small group of them, and yeah, they're not leaving, even if they could, because why should they? I mean, it's the same thing. Their ancestors came to a place that was uninhabited, was basically unlivable. It was a desert. Most of it was a desert, and their ancestors survived that climate. Which is not in any way relatable to European climate. No. And they made that place. Most of the young people in our movement now. I mean, hell, even I didn't understand, the dynamics of South Africa until 2005. I mean, I was completely clueless. But in the 80s and even in the early 90s, I mean, South Africa might as well have been leading the world in a number of industrial means, including like agricultural export. I mean, they were leading the world it wasn't even comparison. They were beating America in terms of agricultural export, things like that. A lot of their machines that they were innovating were beating the rest of the world. So it wasn't even all that long ago.
Oh no,
but all it took was one regime change. That's all it takes is one regime change, and you don't get it back.
And that was a communist takeover, by the way. I mean,
exactly.
It was completely communist, funded by communists.
Even here, for all the people who say. There's a whole bunch of people that say that communism is defunct. Yeah, well, look at South Africa in the early 90s. When apartheid ended, guess what? Communism took over. Because that's what happens with communism is they piggyback off of seemingly good things, like ending apartheid, right? Everybody wanted to end apartheid. They thought it was, unjust and immoral and inhuman or whatever. But so guess who spearheaded ending apartheid? It was the Communist Party.
Oh yeah.
And so, of course, the Communist Party won because that was the single issue thing that people were
They
voting
had
on.
guns smuggled in. I mean, there was a documentary here in the UK of this unassuming English couple that actually smuggled guns into South Africa, openly admit it on TV because it's okay. But it doesn't matter because they smuggled guns in to terrorist groups at the time, which was Nelson Mandela was the head of the terrorist wing. That guy that people praise everywhere. That's why he was in jail. His wife, Winnie, continued his reign of terror. But they smuggled guns in there. They have a documentary about them. There they are, this unassuming couple in Middle England. Yeah, they were gun smugglers for the communists and help the South Africans overthrow the evil, racist, blah, 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 you name it, whatever they want to attach to it regime. Imagine if that had been the other way around. Smuggling, you get what I'm saying? But why is it okay? Because why is our government not arresting these people for helping foreign entities get guns, smuggling them? Why isn't it arresting? Because it tells you who's ruling them, right?
Exactly. Well, and we have to remember, too, before South Africa, there was Rhodesia. And Rhodesia was a 100% successful case because now Rhodesia doesn't even exist. It's Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. But Rhodesia was the same in terms of South Africa. I mean, they might as well have been, the only, there's no difference between them culturally, industrially. I mean, nothing. They were pretty much the same. The only difference is that Rhodesia got targeted first. And, there wasn't, we didn't have social media back then to draw attention to it because that, all of that came to an end in the 80s as well. And that one was actually even more, what's more frustrating now reading about it after the fact is that the United States was actually telling anybody who was helping Rhodesia, like for instance, South Africa was sending them raw material so that they could make weapons and make vehicles and things like that to defend themselves. And they had actually Rhodesia during that time experienced one of the greatest armament revolutions you've ever seen. The most ingenious machines, both like vehicles and firearms and things like that. Some of the coolest stuff to ever hit that market came out of Rhodesia in the 1980s. So South Africa was more than happy to send them materials and money, and the United States and the UN actually said, if you continue to do this, not only will we hit you with sanctions, but we will put boots on the ground. So unfortunately, that's all it took. And South Africa was no longer able to, to support Rhodesia. But now, the scariest part is we're seeing this now in an era where we do have social media, where any of us now can spread news, and make it go viral in an instant. And it's still happening, man. Like you said, South Africa, whites are between 5 and 10% of the population. I've seen as low as 5, I've seen as high as 10, but that's it. And they're still saying whites have privilege.
Yep.
They're still saying whites are the dominant group of people, when again 90% of the rest of the country is black.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely insanity.
And so again, there's still affirmative action to only hire blacks. Yeah. And in the scariest places too, the military and the law enforcement, where all the power to kill is, it's all going to
they actually
blacks.
Have a racial. So if the population was 5% whites, they could only hire 5%. I believe that's what it's kind of a strange one. So they could only hire, any company can only have 5% whites. Or whatever the population is. Yeah, so they completely, it's essentially affirmative action for blacks, which, why don't we do that in our country? Why don't we go, okay, we're all, because they won't, because it's against us. So this is what people don't realise. This is what people, Christopher, who's too busy crying, bleeding his little heart out, if he is a white guy, for some ancient tragedy that he gives him some kind of meaning to his pointless life. Because that's the truth. Most people, they bleed their hearts out for others because, it makes them feel like they're doing something. They're rallying against something because, they're sponsored by Coca-Cola. You want to be a cool kid. Go to Starbucks, get a coffee and talk about white privilege. You know what I mean? I mean, it's become like a fashion accessory at the moment, being a liberal, whining asshole, right? Yeah. But that's what they do. They like it. They virtue signal. Whereas you want to talk about the real. I tell you, something you'll see with any of these alternative video channels or whatever, you'll see them flooded with so-called far-right material. Why? Because when something when any place for free speech opens up, you know why people that are considered far-right by the general public flood there? Because we're the only ones that are having our speech censored. Yeah? And this is something that always makes me laugh with this. It's like, we're the oppressed. It's like, well, you can speak on YouTube. You can speak everywhere openly. Yeah, openly. I mean, we saw, like I say, the CEO of YouTube there telling us, we're going to give more. We're going to raise up black voices on our platform. Not just give them equal, we're going to raise them up. As they just did another swipe and banned a load of people that talked even remotely pro-Western or white civilization. We're not even talking anybody that took it that far, right? They were just big channels that had a bit too much say, a bit too much influence. And now I don't necessarily follow any of those channels, but you get what I'm saying. They were considered by the mainstreamers in our circles, so they took them down. And that's what I mean. You want to be a true revolutionary, Christopher, then you're on the wrong side, mate. You got corporate sponsors. But we're going to have to wrap up soon because I think we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. I don't really want to go over that, and I know RC would like to keep it around that too. So I know we didn't really get into much of the discussion about what to do or where we should go. So if there's anything you want to wrap up with, RC, please fire away. Could be pretty much anything here.
No, nothing specific other than
about building communities, maybe, because I know you mentioned that earlier, and the importance of that at a time, at such a pivotal time as now.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing to take away from all of this is that the pro-white community, whether you consider it a movement or not, it's a community. Understand that it is not a social club. As much as it would be fun to treat it as a social club and just be with like-minded people and share jokes with like-minded people, we don't have that luxury anymore. I mean, like we just covered a minute ago with South Africa, it only took one regime change in the early 90s. It wasn't that long ago. One regime change to turn South Africa from one of the highest first world countries the planet had to now white people there are literally facing genocide. That's one generation. That's all it takes. And it can happen in any other country in the world. Don't think that this can't happen in yours. We're seeing it happen right now in America. The exact same talking points are being pushed right here, as we just illustrated throughout this entire show. So if you're going to be a part of the pro-white community, take it seriously. Yeah. And while we're not likely going to have some type of political entity in the immediate future, you can start forming a real life community with your neighbors, because you are not the only people seeing this. And even if you are the only person in your neighborhood who is aware of what's going down, it shouldn't take too much to really open people's eyes to the rest of this stuff. I mean, just that one video that Phil shared in the middle of this show should be enough to get people thinking. So start making friends in real life. Start preparing with your friends in real life. Prepare in any way that you can. And I'm talking 100% legally. Whatever the laws are in your state or your nation, follow them. But prepare, because the world is changing right now. And like I said, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've never seen change happening at this pace, not even close. So something big is going to happen, and we have to be prepared to see it through and to rebuild afterwards, because I promise the world is going to look a lot different when all of this is done playing out, and it's going to be a pile of rubble that we are going to have to pick up.
Yeah, I think there's important words there, RC. Communities. And remember, if you think that, like, RC, if there's not many around you, that there's going to be a lot around you that are thinking like us. And boldness, courage, it's infectious. So if you speak up, if you can raise your voice in a conversation, just to say politely in a group, just say your thoughts, you might start finding that maybe outside of that group, someone will come over to you and go, yeah, I think the same. Because people are scared to talk. You've got to understand. But when they see somebody else talk, they're more likely to open up and talk to you. So try and find, and it's very important, as RC said, that you, in your local community, because you can have 100 friends in another country or the other side of the country. but it's going to be your neighbours if things go bad, that you need to stick together. And I'm not saying any like major incident, just if things go bad, like we've had depressions, we've had all sorts of chaos happen in the past. Having a community or being part of a community where you can trust people and they're local to you is gonna set you up strong in any situation, good or bad.
Well,
right?
Community is the only way that we survive.
Exactly.
And I mean that sincerely. Depending on the nature of the catastrophe, individuals do not survive.
Humans have
it's
always
groups
jumped
do.
in tribes. Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. It's our biological design. We're biologically hardwired to need each other. That's a good thing. So act on that. Build your group, build your tribe, and be willing to work with other groups and other tribes also of your people. So yeah, because you won't make it through on your own, I promise, and neither will your children. So start making friends in real life and start taking this seriously, because the opposite
serious.
side is definitely taking their fight serious, 100%.
Oh yeah, 100% serious, and we're seeing it now. I think they're great words to leave it on. So I'll bid you all good night. I'll just do that little rewards thing, but I hope everybody enjoyed or took someone from the show. I know it's not that enjoyable sometimes to go through these things. We don't always enjoy making some of the videos we make, but like I say, we do it anyway. The video that you saw halfway through, that will be out tomorrow. I'll try and get it up early, so any Americans waking up should already be there. And thanks for tuning in. And like I say, I hope you got something from it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Be well. Oh, and obviously, thanks for RC for joining me. It's been a great discussion, and I really enjoyed it myself. So you guys go out there. Remember, be bold. Laters.